Is Brock Bowers the best tight end to ever play the game? 21 years old, 15th all-time in tight end receptions as a rookie. It just is unbelievable, Coop. What are your takeaways from Brock Bowers? And is there another tight end sort of popping up the ranks usage-wise from this past week?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes, and the long answer is yes. Brock Bowers, the best pass-catching tight end I think that we've seen, man. And, Rob Gronkowski came out and said it himself. And you can make arguments that guys like Rob Gronkowski or, Jason Witten and some of these guys, George Kittle, are better all-around tight ends. But you and I talked about it. We both kind of basically said this guy is Big Jordy Nelson, right? Like just a stronger guy that has the speed, has the ability. And I'll tell you what, we've seen him at this insanely young age. He's on pace for over 100 catches, and he's doing it on a terrible team. He's doing it with a revolving door of quarterbacks. He had a quarterback start this week for him that wasn't even about set to play because Aiden O'Connell essentially broke his thumb here. I mean, this guy is locked in, dialed in, and every team that they're facing for the past 3 weeks with no Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams is traded now, so he's not walking through that door. Every team they have faced has known that he's the man and that they have to try to stop him, and they can't. 13 targets again this week. Brock Bowers rocks. Also, we saw the fallout from the other trade. Amari Cooper sent to the Bills. Guess what? David Njoku, 13 targets. It's wheels up in these situations, and you have to be ready for these catalysts, right? Like with Brock Bowers, you couldn't have had him. With Njoku, you might have been able to sneak him. Start looking around at other catalysts for change in this game. How did we get Trey McBride? Well, he started playing a little bit, and then Zach Ertz got hurt, and then it was wheels up. Well, guess what? Ben Sennett played a little bit this week, actually caught his first touchdown pass, got a couple targets. What happens if Zach Ertz gets hurt, right? We saw Drake May take over. Hunter Henry scores a touchdown last week. This week goes out and catches 9 balls, right? We have a quarterback change for the Steelers. Not a lot of targets this week for Pat Frymuth, but these are the catalysts for change, Theo, that we have to be ready for, and you have to make those trades when you get the chance or add those guys off waivers because you only get so many opportunities to take the risk before everybody sees what's happening. And now, in this situation, you can't touch Brock.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some trades later on. Brock Bowers is literally unobtainable. I think it's still worthwhile to kick the tires on David Njoku, even though you're buying high, because Coop, the target share has just been phenomenal. It's been like 29 and 30% target share back-to-back weeks. That's legit. And the craziest stat on Bowers for me, like the guy might break Puka Nakua's rookie reception record. Right. But the craziest stat for me, he has 18 more targets than any other tight end right now. That's wild. That's crazy. Animal. That's just a beast. And for me, it's, we talked about this in the pre-show, and this is something where once in a while we see these running backs in new situations like completely fall off, completely bust. Sometimes it's the new scheme change. Sometimes we're seeing it's like older running back leaves a team and the team didn't sign him for a reason. They know that the decline is coming. But this year has been completely the opposite. You have Derrick Henry, you have Saquon Barkley, you have Josh Jacobs, you have Tony Pollard, you have Aaron Jones, you have Joe Mixon. It's DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard all inside of RB2 land, and J.K. Dobbins, for that matter, a free agent running back. So it's just been unbelievable. And the reason I bring it up is, we saw the Saquon Barkley revenge game. We've seen Derrick Henry win 2 out of the last 3 AFC Players of the Week awards. It's just been an unbelievable run from these free agent running backs. It's sort of like we're going to have to go back and see, is like this the new trend in the NFL? It's sort of like the NBA when guys start to move teams and you're used to seeing like maybe a veteran in a new jersey. For us, it's like, are we going to embrace these situations where these guys step in like tailor-made roles to feature them in the offenses? It's just wild to me. And Saquon Barkley yesterday gets 176 rushing yards. Coop, that is the second highest rushing output he's ever had in his career. This is truly remarkable what we're seeing collectively from these free agent running backs. And last year, David Montgomery. So the trend started last year, and Miles Sanders obviously a bust, but it's been almost like a 90+% success rate when we're seeing these guys switch teams recently.
Yep. And I mean, Saquon had to stick it to Tiki Barber this week, didn't he, man?
I love it.
It's just beautiful. I will say, the NFL is a kind of cyclical league where it trends one way, and then as teams adjust and say, okay, here's what everyone's doing, how do we combat that? It trends the other way. right? So it used to be that every team would use bell cow backs, and these guys were getting paid huge money, and they were sought after commodities. And then now you're seeing them all actually hit free agency because a couple guys got overpaid, and you can't franchise tag anybody because the top 5 guys are paid too much money, right? And you look at some of the other positions, like tight end, for a long time, you could just go find a tight end on free agency. With the shift, with the the 2 high safeties and everything, you saw it this year. Nobody's letting the tight ends hit free agency. I think you're right that what we're going to see here is as these teams realize, like, wow, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, all these guys helping these teams win, and having a solid running foundation in this environment is huge. You're going to see the change come here, where this is a great free agent class. Teams aren't going to let these guys get away anymore, and then the position is going to come back into the fold. I've seen it so many times with Bill Belichick with the safeties, and then now everyone's paying safeties. It's like, it's a cyclical league. It's going to go this way. And I wouldn't be surprised at a certain point if teams start looking around and saying that these quarterback contracts are getting a little out of control. I know it's like you got to figure out how to allocate the money. So not surprised at all, man. Not surprised at all that great running backs go to better situations and look good.
And I love your comment about the quarterbacks, because I think Sam Darnold's success this year is going to show teams that it's not always. A lot of times you've got to pay for what you get. You don't necessarily infinitely improve your chances to succeed with like sort of these not quite primetime, not quite elite level passers, and you overpay one of those guys when there's these certain journeymen like a Darnold that might be able to be a perfect bridge quarterback. Jared Goff, for that matter, what Detroit had to pay for him. So completely with you. I love your takeaway. And one of the free agent running backs, though, Coop, I got some beef with right now. And I know this is a guy you were big on in the preseason, but what is Joe Mixon doing to our CJ Stroud shares? CJ Stroud has only 2 top 12 finishes this season. And Sunday was pretty much the bottom, where you get 33 rush attempts and only 21 pass attempts. And Coop, this was not like some game where Houston had like 3 pick sixes in the first half and a punt return touchdown, and they're just running the clock out. This was a 2-point loss on the road, no less. And in a road 2-point loss, the neutral game script was all run.
Right. And you know what? We see this time and time again with these teams. What we actually want for fantasy football, right, is not garbage time. There's been some guys to make us think that, like Blake Bortles. But for the most part, you don't want garbage time. You also don't want these teams that are too good, these teams that are well balanced, right? I've seen it time and time again. You watched Patrick Mahomes come out and throw 50 touchdown passes when he had to, and the team went 12-4. And the very next year, the run game improved, the defense improved, and the team went 14-2. But what happened? He dropped down to the below 30 touchdown passes. This is not the first time we've seen it. Peyton Manning, back with the Colts, threw 49 touchdown passes one year, Theo. Guess what? 12-4 that year. Very next year, better defense, better run game. They go 14-2. It's a better team, not a better fantasy football team. Throws for only 29 touchdown passes. This happens time and time again. We want teams that have just enough talent to make it happen, but their back is against the ropes. You want them forcing the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. You want them forcing the ball to Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. You don't want them having Nico Collins and Tank Dell, with Damian Pierce as a starting running back. You don't want teams having Nico and Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon and Laramie Tunsil and a better offensive line and a better defense. That's not conducive to fantasy football. If you look at what the Commanders, the situation they're in, that's what you want. You want a team that has a bad defense, just lost Jonathan Allen, and they have to run the score up and they have to throw the football. That's the best situation for fantasy. So some of these teams, the Texans and the Lions and the 49ers, like at the end of the day, you're going to look back on the statistics and say that was a good team. But you're going to remember the weekly outcomes and say to yourself, that was actually kind of a tough journey in fantasy. Unless we see guys get injured from week to week, it can be inconsistent. And this week it's Joe Mixon. Next week it might be Stephon Diggs. Then it might be Tank Dell. And that's what you're seeing with the 49ers. And that's what you're seeing with the Lions.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think you broke it down perfectly. It still doesn't make it any easier to accept. I think people that drafted CJ Stroud, and really Coop, that's sort of been like the jury's still out for our guy, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, I think, could really turn things around. But it's sort of that little pocket of the draft was Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud, and they steamed up into this little mini pocket of second-year quarterbacks where people were really betting on them to be like the two challengers to the top. And it's sort of like there's been a lot of times where year 2 has been the massive breakout year for quarterbacks. Think about Jalen Hurts, think about Lamar Jackson, you think about Patrick Mahomes, but it's certainly not this year. CJ Stroud was way more consistent last year in terms of giving us QB1 performances. And Anthony Richardson, that's too long a discussion to have right here today. There's some real issues right there, but I want to talk about a positive. You talked about the two trade winners from yesterday, and certainly Brock Bowers and David Njoku, no question. Those guys are big-time winners from the trades this past week. And also, Coop, we're looking for more trades. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about more trades this season. Could be a cascade effect. But for me, it's Amari Cooper's involvement. Amari Cooper gets 5 targets on only 17 snaps. So he ends up with 4 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. And I think this is time for you to kick the tires and see if the Amari Cooper manager wants to sell. Amari Cooper manager might say, hey, he only had 4 catches, 66 yards. He got that touchdown. This is my window to sell. I'm sharp. I'm going to sell him off of a touchdown week. But Coop, everything about this screams the offense slightly shifting into a different direction. Cooper shows up, and Josh Allen has the most pass attempts he's had all season long with 33. 33 is certainly nothing to like revolutionary, but it's still the most pass attempts he's had in any single game. And Coop, sort of you see guys slotting into what they should be properly, where Khalil Shakir bumps down to wide receiver 2, and he ends up being very productive. 7 catches, 65 yards on 7 targets. You see Keon Coleman have his breakout game with no pressure on Keon Coleman anymore. The 21-year-old can just go out there and get very, very easy to manage coverages, maybe beneficial coverages against certain teams. He ends up with 125 receiving yards. And Dalton Kincaid ends up catching 3 balls for 52 yards. Again, nothing great, but this is not like a catastrophic predicament. So I think there was sort of the people saying that Amari Cooper was going to nuke the other wide receivers. It might be the contrary. We'll see when his snaps pick up, but it seems to me that the Bills' offense is trending up. And Coop, nothing better than our guy Josh Allen. 15 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's touchdowns combined, but the guy is just out there cooking. This offense could really take off in the second half of the season.
Right. That was his biggest problem. And that's why you have so many unders here, is that when you have a turnover and it creates a short field, that team goes down and scores and you get the ball right back. That's how you hit these overs, man. So yeah, they've been very conservative. But the big difference here between the Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper trade is that Devontae Adams went to go play with Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers. He knew the language already. He not only knows the plays, but the language. That's super important. You can get away if you get traded from a West Coast offense team to a West Coast offense team that uses similar language. If that happened for Amari Cooper, then he probably would have played more than 17 snaps. He probably would have played the whole game like Devontae Adams did, but he's never been in a Erhardt-Perkins type offense. That is what the Bills have used for a long time here. Unless I don't think they let Joe Brady completely change it. So it's a different language than what he spoke everywhere along the way. You got to come in and they said he did a crash course in the playbook, learned a few plays. This time next week, he's going to know all the plays. This guy's a professional. He's been with multiple teams now, obviously with the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Browns. He's going to know the language. And he's going to play the whole game. So definitely go in on him. I think Shakir and Dalton Kincaid could definitely gain some value from this. I think Keon Coleman is the one you got to be careful with. Our guy JJ Zachariason had a tweet here where he went back and rewatched the game and basically suggested that these two guys weren't on the field very often at the same time. So when Keon Coleman was in, Amari was out, and vice versa. We're going to have to see how they can. I would love if it was Amari and Coleman on the outside with Shakir inside, and then Dalton Kincaid doing his thing and Dawson Knox really only being kind of a blocking tight end that comes in. But I'm not sure if they're willing to do that. They like using Dawson Knox. They like using Mac Hollins. They like using a little bit of Curtis Samuel. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. They usually don't do what the fantasy football guys want them to do. So
no, not at all. And we don't want to overpay for Coleman, but it's still very reassuring to see that. This is a guy that they selected early in the second round, and we've sort of been searching for this kind of performance. And for it to occur with Amari Cooper there, to me, I'll take the semi-optimistic with respect to JJ that this guy can become a potential flex down the stretch. Shakir, you nailed it though. Like Shakir, if he's going to get 7 targets with easier to manage coverage, a lot less pressure put on him, and Josh Allen just finding him in those potential spike weeks. He's a fun player to have on your roster as a flex. The running game is strong in Buffalo. Ray Davis's emergence. They now have 2 running backs that I think we feel pretty comfortable about in fantasy. So, yeah, I love this team. Here on Redraft in 5, we also talk about trade targets. Who's a player that you're kicking the tires on looking to make a trade for?
Yeah, now I know it's early to be talking playoffs. I do have some teams that are wagons. Theo, probably going to win best ball me and no big deal. But I do have some teams that are looking at 6-1, 7-0. 7-0 in the Beantown Brawl. Shout out to the Boston analysts for showing up at least to the draft. So in leagues like that, I'm starting to look at the playoff schedule, man. And I will say there's one obvious, awesome schedule for running backs. It is by far the best one. The player plays on Monday night. We're recording on Monday. He plays tonight. So James Conner, don't want to jinx anything there. Trey Benson is who you want behind James Conner. But let me tell you, what do you think about this playoff schedule? New England Patriots, Carolina Panthers, Los Angeles Rams. Does that sound like a conducive environment for running the football?
Does that sound like something you might be interested in? It does.
If so.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I love it. And if we got it wrong and James Conner has a dud on Monday night and Trey Benson gets an opportunity and is a dud, let us know in the comments how wrong we were. But we've been pretty good with these. And I'll say this one, another one where people are just going to be angry for me saying this. Devon Achane. Devon Achane, this is your time to go buy him. Devon Achane yesterday out carries Raheem Mostert 15-11. Raheem Mostert also had a fumble. You get the 3 targets, which sounds like nothing, but it was actually second overall on the team in this broken offense. And when they had a hurry up situation, you had Devon Achane in there. So this is a player that we've seen have immense heights for us in fantasy. We saw it earlier in the season. He looked like he was going to be a league winner. I think when Tua Tagovailoa comes back, and I understand going out and trading for the Tyreek Hills and the Jalen Waddles. Those 2 guys had 1 catch each yesterday, 3 catches combined. Really, really bad. And I think they're both fine to go get. I think Tua's gonna make this offense normal again, and you're going to see these guys get sort of back to normal. But the one I want to lean on is Devon Achane. Post-bye week, gets over the concussion. He's completely healthy, is able to handle 17 touches. And Coop, if he gets 17 touches a game with Tua, this is a guy that's going to move right back into RB1 land. And I can pay maybe high-end RB3 prices, low-end RB2 prices. There's some people that want completely out on this team. This team is averaging less than 12 points per game right now. So people want out. People are angry. And I'm going to go back to the well. I'm going to pick up some Devon Achane redraft, and also in Dynasty, I'm going to kick those tires.
Yeah, not to mention, it's kind of been a running joke, the myth that a running back will actually play wide receiver. We always say it with backup running backs. Oh, well, he'll just play slot, right? And then it never happens. Guess what? With Devon Achane, it's kind of happening. I mean, and he's also lining up out wide, not just going in motion. They put him right out there. He leads all wide receivers in slot snaps. He leads all wide receivers in wide receiver snaps. He's on pace for over 100, which would be the first time that would happen since Tariq Cohen back in 2018. It just doesn't happen. So you also get the benefit of that. When Raheem Mostert's on the field, that doesn't mean that Devon Achane necessarily has to be out. And people will say, oh, Jalen Wright is mixing in 3-headed monster. Jalen Wright got 5 carries on 6 snaps. If I'm a defensive coordinator and I see that, I'm like, hey, when this guy's in the game, they're probably giving him the ball. I'm always shocked when you see these tight ends that go in the game and they've literally never gotten a target, yet they still have somebody covering this guy. Or, a guy goes in the game and he gets the ball every time he's in there, right? When Taysom Hill goes in there, what do you think is going to happen? But yeah, I'm not worried about Jalen Wright. I'm not super worried about Raheem Mostert. Devon Achane is awesome. And with Tyreek Hill, with Tua coming back, he's going to be awesome. And I mentioned Tyreek Hill because we always do our trades and then we do our hammers. I'm just going to jump right into my hammer here, because my hammer this week is Tyreek Hill. Now, the thing with Tua is they say that he's going to try to play or whatever it is. The reality is the NFL actually already came out and told us that Tua cleared concussion protocol. They actually had their spokesman come out and say, hey, just so you guys know, this decision on whether he plays or not is out of our hands. It's completely out of our hands. It's the player and the team's decision. We're not stepping in any way. It's not our responsibility. He's cleared concussion protocol. And if he's going to practice this week, I mean, what would be the reason to hold him out from the game this week? And also, on top of that, what would be our reason to fade him? I mean, it's not like he's coming off a hamstring or something that could truly affect his physical ability. right? They've cleared him. The doctors have cleared him. He says he wants to play. If he comes back out and he's running the offense the way he can with the quick handoffs and the quick throws, he had the fastest time to release of essentially any quarterback before he got hurt, then why wouldn't Tyreek Hill be back? Why wouldn't Jalen Waddle be back on the menu? I'm throwing Tyreek Hill right back in my lineups if Tua starts, and I'm probably going to rank him in the top 12. I don't see why I wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. And I think it's sort of like we saw it in week 1. Both of these guys thrived fantasy scoring wise with Tua Tagovailoa. So it's like this whole idea that we want to be so punitive to players. The situation has just been horrible. The only player who's been able to produce offensively in the passing game is Jonnu Smith. The whole thing is broken. And I think you're right. It's going to turn around quickly. And for me,
and we get the Cardinals this week too, Theo. Not to interrupt, but the Cardinals, baby. Let's go.
And for me, my player actually has a matchup that's not really that beneficial. San Francisco is like middle of the pack in terms of wide receiver stats allowed. They've allowed, I think they're like 18th in catches allowed, and right about there for touchdowns allowed, for yardage allowed. Like they haven't been too like leaky versus these wide receivers. But I think we're going to see post-bye week, Dallas Cowboys with their backs against the wall. I think you're going to come out and see. You saw CeeDee Lamb in week 6 get you like 14 targets. He ended up with 89 receiving yards. It wasn't like leading to anything. But I think we're going to come back and we're going to see something like that again. I think Dallas's game plan against the 49ers is going to be get CeeDee Lamb the ball, get CeeDee Lamb the ball, get CeeDee Lamb the ball, and maybe mix in a little Jake Ferguson. I think it's going to be condensed. I think this is Dak to CD, backs against the wall, a chance to kind of get right. This is a real opportunity. The 49ers are reeling. The 49ers have issues. This is a 3-4 football team, and Dallas has a chance to sort of turn their season around like they did last year. It's almost the exact situation. CeeDee Lamb goes into the bye week with as wide receiver like 13 last year, exits the bye week, and from weeks 8 to 18 on, he averaged 28 points a game. I don't think we'll get 28 points a game again, but I do think they're going to figure out a way to get him the ball in the bye week. He is so important to the offense, and I would be willing to put money on it this week. CeeDee Lamb is your hammer in all formats. DFS, whatever you want to do, CeeDee Lamb's going to come out and crush post-bye week.
I'm all in on CeeDee Lamb this week as well. I love starting players off the bye, and Jake Ferguson's going to run into Fred Warner and Devondre Campbell over the middle, which is a brutal situation. I mean, they kept Travis Kelce in check in a game where the Chiefs didn't really have anything else. So I think it's wheels up CeeDee Lamb this week. I'm not worried about the matchup one bit.
I love it. And Coop, we're going to crush it as well on waivers. Make sure you're right here for this channel. Coop and I are dropping waiver wire advice in 10 minutes or less. How could you miss that? All your waiver wire advice you need in 10 minutes or less right here. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you soon.